In a galaxy on the brink of war, a lone human envoy dares to challenge an alien empire's ultimatum near a black hole's edge. With the fate of billions hanging in the balance, Jay Carter's bold words spark causing an unthinkable truce. Dive into this cosmic tale of ingenuity and survival. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating videos and to inspire even more amazing content. Outpost Zeta-13 hung in space like a forgotten relic, its gravity-defying architecture clinging precariously to the edge of a black hole's event horizon. The black hole's immense gravitational pull stretched the fabric of space itself, bending light and warping time. A swirling vortex of stardust and cosmic gases formed a haunting backdrop as over 50 ships from the Interstellar Alliance orbited the station, each one a testament to a species' technological prowess. Yet, despite the grand display of power, the real battle wasn't about firepower. It was about egos. The Alliance, a disjointed coalition of 15 alien species, had been on the brink of collapse for cycles, and now it was perched on the edge of its last chance. The Voryn Hegemony, a brutal, insectoid empire with an unyielding thirst for conquest, had thrown down the gauntlet, see the mineral-rich Xyler Nebula or face planetary annihilation. The stakes had never been higher. Jay Carter, a scrappy human junior envoy from Earth, sat quietly at the back of the conference hall, a small, unassuming figure in the midst of towering alien delegates. A Voryn warlord stood at the center, addressing the room in a voice that crackled with power, every word dripping with venom. Jay's fingers hovered over a battered data slate, the device far less sophisticated than the hyper-intelligent tech in the room. But to him, it was more than enough. The screen flickered as he scanned through trade logs and resource data, his mind working faster than the alien factions could keep up. The room's tension was palpable, with representatives from each species already forming alliances in their minds. The Sithrans, telepathic beings with eerie, harmonic chanting, exchanged silent thoughts, while the Lyrith, gas-dwelling entities, pulsed with fluctuating colors of anxiety. The Quellans, probability-obsessed, didn't even pay attention to the Voryn. Instead, they stared into the infinite possibilities unfolding across multiple dimensions. And yet, Jay, a man from a species of 7 billion, completely unremarkable by galactic standards, was about to change everything with one simple statement. You're all posturing for a war. You can't win. The room froze. Chapter 2. The Voryn's Arrival and Ultimatum. The Voryn fleet arrived in a thunderous spectacle, their ships gliding silently through space like predatory insects. The black exoskeletons of their massive warships gleamed under the dim glow of distant stars. Each vessel was a marvel of ruthless engineering, outfitted with plasma cannons capable of disintegrating entire cities in a single blast, their energy output reaching 50 terajoules per second, a level of destructive power the Alliance had never faced before. At the heart of this might was Warlord Crush, a towering figure, his insectoid body encased in armor that seemed to absorb light itself. His compound eyes glinted as he entered the summit hall, his presence imposing. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, his insectoid features were sharp and cold, a reflection of the Voryn's brutal conquest-driven mentality. He strode confidently to the center of the room, each step echoing through the chamber like the beat of a war drum. With a voice that could command armies, Crush delivered the ultimatum: see the Xyler Nebula, or face annihilation. Your mineral-rich systems are ours by right, or we will wipe out every last one of you. The room, previously filled with a cacophony of alien voices, went deathly silent. The Sithrans' harmonic chants ceased mid-note, their eerie calm replaced by a cold apprehension. The Quellans froze in their multidimensional calculations, while the Lyrith undulated nervously, their gaseous forms quivering with an unseen tension. Jay Carter, seated on the far side of the hall, glanced at the data slate in his hands. The Xyler Nebula, a region of immense strategic value, was already stretched thin by overuse. Both the Alliance and the Voryn had drained their resources to the brink. The situation was a deadlock. The numbers didn't lie. Neither side could afford a prolonged war. Ignoring the diplomatic protocols, Jay leaned forward. "You're all posturing for a war you can't win," he muttered, his voice cutting through the hushed silence. Eyes turned toward him. The room was stunned. Chapter 3. Jay speaks up. Jay Carter had barely finished speaking when the room fell into a thick, suffocating silence. Every eye turned toward him, disbelief rippling through the Alliance delegates. He wasn't supposed to speak. He wasn't supposed to be noticed. He was just an observer, a human diplomat sent to watch the spectacle unfold without levying a mark. But there was no denying it. The words had come out before he could stop them, and now they hung in the air like a challenge. "You're all posturing for a war you can't win," Jay repeated, his voice still low but now carrying the weight of something dangerous. The Voryn warlord Kresh flared his mandibles, his insectoid gaze narrowing. The sheer audacity of a human, one so far removed from galactic politics, daring to speak in such a bold manner enraged him. But there was something about Jay's words that gnawed at the edges of Kresh's certainty. He could feel his claws clench involuntarily. He had faced countless species in battle, but this human's interruption felt different, unpredictable. Jay, oblivious to the storm brewing in the room, turned back to his data slate. The device was nothing compared to the advanced technologies surrounding him. Alien machines capable of instantaneous data transmission across star systems. Weapons of unimaginable power. But the slate was enough. Jay had worked in the depths of asteroid mines back on Earth, scraping out a levying with only simple tools and his instincts. Flipping through a few trade logs, Jay found the numbers he needed. The Xyler Nebula was nearly mined out, with over 70% of the mineral reserves already depleted. Both the Voryn and the Alliance were struggling to maintain their fleets, their plasma reserves dangerously low. The war wasn't sustainable for either side. "Both sides are bleeding," Jay said with a shrug. "You're using 40% of your fleets just to maintain a facade of power." He looked at the delegates. "Does anyone here actually think this war can keep going?" The room was still, but Jay had thrown the first stone. Chapter 4. The Voryn's Paranoia. Warlord Kresh's eyes narrowed into slits as Jay's words hung in the air. The shock was evident, but beneath the surface, there was something far darker stirring. The human had not only spoken out of turn, but had also presented a damning truth, one that struck at the very core of the Voryn's war machine. Kresh's six limbs twitched as his mind raced. He had never encountered a species like this. "You think you can lecture us?" Kresh's voice was a low hiss, his mandibles clicking in irritation. The Voryn were not used to being told the truth in such a direct, almost insolent manner. But as his eyes flicked to the holographic display above the summit table, something caught his attention. The data Jay had presented was irrefutable. The Xyler Nebula's mineral reserves were nearly gone, and both the Voryn and the Alliance fleets were stretched too thin. Kresh had calculated this already, but hearing it from the human, with his unassuming demeanor and lack of respect for proper diplomatic procedure, made it all the more unsettling. It was as if Jay's simplicity, his disregard for protocol, somehow made his analysis more credible. Without thinking, Kresh gestured for his soldiers to take Jay into custody. "Bring him to me," he ordered, his voice cold and calculating. As Jay was escorted out of the chamber, he barely noticed the tension in the air. In truth, he hadn't expected much to come of his words. He'd only spoken up because the room was choking on their own incompetence. But he didn't know what was brewing in the minds of the Voryn. Kresh was seeing something in Jay that no one else had. Voryn intelligence had a concept, a weapon beyond their brutal power, a mind capable of seeing what others could not. They called it a mind weapon, and Jay, in their eyes, was now the key to something far more dangerous than any weapon they possessed. "I can't believe we're taking him seriously," one of Kresh's commanders muttered. "It's a bluff." Kresh, however, was already seeing a deeper game. Chapter 5. The Growing Paranoia. The tension in the Voryn War Council was palpable. Kresh stood before a holographic projection, his compound eyes flickering as he scanned the intelligence reports. The Xyler Nebula, the heart of the conflict, was now more a graveyard of mineral-rich worlds than a thriving sector. The Voryn had exhausted 60% of their plasma reserves in a single year of skirmishes, and the Alliance was equally drained. But it wasn't the dwindling resources that gnawed at Kresh's mind. It was Jay. The human's words had embedded themselves in his thoughts like a foreign toxin, one he could not ignore. Jay's casual analysis, delivered with the swagger of a man who had never known true galactic power, felt like a crack in Kresh's ironclad certainty. Kresh's claws flexed involuntarily as he reviewed the human's offhand comments about humanity's history. Nuclear brinkmanship, Jay had said, as if it were some trivial anecdote. Kresh's mind raced. Humanity was a species that had clawed its way back from near destruction, using anything, any trick, any tactic to survive. That was the nature of Earth's wars, Jay had claimed. We've got a knack for turning chaos into victory, Jay had added, referring to Earth's nuclear standoffs, the Cold War era, and humanity's near extinction. The Voryn didn't understand bluffing. To them, every word had weight, and every threat could be realized. But Jay's words, those weren't threats. They were dangerous. They spoke of a species willing to risk everything, a species that, perhaps, didn't need the precision of high-tech warfare to win. Maybe, just maybe, Earth was capable of something worse than annihilation. In a rare moment of self-doubt, Kresh ordered the Voryn intelligence division to track Jay's every move. They had underestimated him once. They would not make the same mistake again. Back on Zeta-13, Jay had no idea that his mere presence had triggered a chain of paranoia that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. To him, it was just another diplomatic conference. But for Kresh, it was the beginning of a very dangerous game. Chapter 6, The Black Hole Looms. The black hole at the edge of Zeta-13 loomed like a silent predator, its gravitational pull stretching the very fabric of space. The station itself was on a precarious orbit, barely holding its ground as the immense force of the black hole threatened to tear it apart. A constant hum resonated through the station as its gravitational shields, designed to withstand up to 50,000 gigaseconds, fought against the pull of the singularity. Yet, no shield could offer protection from the ticking clock of diplomacy. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. The Voryn demanded the Xyler Nebula, and the Alliance scrambled to avoid collapse. In the central summit chamber, representatives from the 15 species had long since abandoned subtlety in favor of outright tension. The Lyrith, gas-dwelling and volatile, pulsed with a furious red glow as their bodies expanded and contracted in agitation. The Sithrans, normally calm, were now caught in a rare moment of discord, their telepathic murmurs escalating into sharp, uncomfortable tones. But Jay Carter was unfazed, sitting at the back of the room, his data slate glowing softly in his hands. He observed the chaos with a casual disinterest. The technology in the room was nothing short of magnificent. Sithran thought-based communication arrays capable of sending messages across light years in an instant. Quillen probability engines predicting every possible outcome with disturbing accuracy. And Voryn warships with weapons that could wipe entire planets from existence. But none of it seemed to matter to Jay. He had no high-tech gadgets, no quantum entanglement devices. Just his Earth-honed instincts and the battered slate he had used to survive the asteroid mining. He wasn't looking for an edge. He was looking for an answer. And as the countdown to total destruction ticked away, Jay found it. We're all playing a game of chicken, Jay said, his voice cutting through the heated debate. And everyone's too proud to blink. The room froze. The black hole's pull seemed to intensify. But Jay had already thrown the first stone in this high-stakes game. He wasn't just speaking about the nebula. He was speaking about the fate of the galaxy itself. Chapter 7, The Voryn Yield. Day 7. The black hole's immense pull had intensified, its singularity tugging at the fabric of spacetime itself. The Zeta-13 outpost groaned under the strain, its engines running at 125% capacity, fighting to maintain orbit. Within the summit chamber, The air felt heavier, the stakes higher. Diplomats, generals, and commanders from all 15 Alliance species stood on the precipice of a decision that could alter the course of the galaxy, yet no one had come closer to a resolution. Tensions were palpable, the alien representatives still locked in their feudal back and forth. The Voryn had made their ultimatum clear, and the Alliance had no way to meet it without collapse. Both sides were crumbling under the weight of war. In the midst of the room's escalating chaos, Jay Carter, the one human who had been silently observing this grand theater, quietly tapped away on his data slate. His eyes flicked between the delegates, all of them seemingly blind to the one undeniable truth: neither side could win. The Voryn's plasma reserves had dropped by 48 from over the past cycles, their warships crippled by the weight of constant battle. The Alliance fared no better, with their supply chain stretched to the breaking point. If the war continued for much longer, both factions would be reduced to nothing more than ashes and debris. With a sigh, Jay leaned back in his seat, running his hand through his hair. He had given the room enough time to marinate in their own feudal discussions. He had enough data now: trade logs, resource depletion stats, and battle records. He could see the solution. There was a way out. He stood. "What's the point?" Jay's voice cut through the room like a knife. The conversation halted, every eye snapping toward him. "You're all standing here, trying to figure out how to fight a war that's already lost. The Xyler Nebula is all but drained. The warships are half empty. You don't need more resources. You need a way to stop the bleeding." He paused, letting his words settle. "Why don't you just stop fighting over it and share?" The room went dead silent. Jay wasn't proposing a utopia. He wasn't talking about grand gestures. He was talking about survival. A co-management agreement over the nebula, dividing it into zones, equally shared between the Voryn and the Alliance. It was simple, logical, and, at this point, the only solution that made sense. Crush, standing across from him, was unmoving for a long moment. His mandibles clicked slowly in thought. The tension was unbearable. Yet, with a final, quiet command, the Voryn leader's voice cut through the thick air. "The Voryn yield," Crush said, his voice far colder than usual. Jay blinked. Wait, what? The Voryn had just agreed to the very terms Jay had suggested. Half of the disputed systems in the Xyler Nebula would be handed over to the Alliance. It was an unimaginable concession, one that shook the entire summit to its core. The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. The Alliance representatives stood frozen, trying to process the impossible. They had come to this summit expecting war, and yet, in a single moment, Jay Carter had brokered peace with nothing more than his unpolished human instincts. In a battered data slate, the black hole loomed just outside the window, but for the first time in days, there was a sense of relief in the air. Jay sat back down, almost oblivious to the chaos he had just sparked. He stared at his data slate, still processing the sheer absurdity of what had just happened. "I was just spitballing," he muttered, half to himself. Chapter 8: The Voryn's Real Fear. The days that followed were a blur. The Voryn, once adamant in their demands, had retreated from half the Xyler Nebula. A co-managed zone was established, a fragile truce that seemed to hang on a thread. Yet, as the Alliance scrambled to process the unexpected turn of events, something deeper was at play, something the human envoy had unknowingly sparked. Back in the depths of the Voryn War Command Center, intercepted transmissions revealed a chilling truth. The Voryn hadn't just yielded because of resource depletion. There was another reason, far more terrifying. A reason that had sent shockwaves through their empire and triggered a paranoid response no one had anticipated. "We've misjudged them," a Voryn intelligence officer muttered, his voice trembling as he reviewed the data. This human. His words were more than a negotiation tactic. Krish stood silent before the data projections. The holographic screens displayed a timeline of their conflict. From initial skirmishes to the catastrophic resource drain, they had suffered. But it was the latest data that made his insectoid eyes widen in disbelief. The Alliance had begun diverting resources toward mining operations in areas they had abandoned just weeks earlier. They were using human ingenuity, something Kresh hadn't fully considered. "I've seen this before." Kresh finally spoke, his voice low but dangerous. "The humans, they don't play by the rules. They think in ways that make no sense. Chaos. And that's what frightens me." The human, Jay Carter, had spoken of humanity's brutal past. Nuclear brinkmanship, the Cold War, and Earth's habit of surviving through sheer willpower. But now, Kresh saw the true cost of underestimating humanity. Earth didn't need sophisticated war machines to win. They could do more with improvised tactics than the Voryn could with all their military technology. Jay had mentioned Earth's chaotic wars with a casual air, yet the Voryn had taken them as a direct threat. The human survival instinct, Jay's offhand reference to barroom tactics, had been interpreted as a coded warning. The Voryn now feared that humanity, despite its primitive technology, could launch an all-out war by exploiting weaknesses they hadn't considered. "They think we're bluffing," muttered Kresh's second-in-command. "That the human race is hiding a secret weapon." "Not a weapon," Kresh replied coldly. "Just Earth." Jay had done what no other species had ever done. He had cracked the Voryn's impenetrable exterior. Not with force, but with humanity's greatest asset, ingenuity. The Voryn intelligence division had spent countless hours attempting to decode the human mind. But they'd missed the most obvious detail: humanity's unpredictability. Kresh knew then that the Voryn had not lost this battle because of dwindling resources or political negotiations. They had lost because they had underestimated Earth's capacity for chaos, a force that, once unleashed, could reshape the galaxy in ways no one, not even the Voryn, could predict. "Let the human think he won," Kresh muttered. "He may have saved the day for now, but the galaxy is not as simple as he believes." The Voryn retreated not out of necessity, but because they feared what Jay Carter and humanity might do next, and they would never forget it. Chapter 9, Aftermath and Reflection. The day after the Voryn's retreat, the summit chamber buzzed with disbelief. The once feuding species of the Interstellar Alliance now found themselves unexpectedly united, their fractious leaders exchanging stunned glances as they began to digest the impossible. The Voryn had backed down. Half of the Xyler Nebula, the vital piece of galactic real estate, was now under the control of the Alliance. It was a staggering concession, one that no one could explain in conventional terms. But there was one person who had made it happen: Jay Carter. Sitting quietly at the back of the room, Jay was largely ignored as the discussions raged on. His data slate rested idly in his hands, a piece of technology no more remarkable than the crude mining tools he had once wielded on Earth's asteroid fields. It wasn't the quantum entanglement communicators, the Cythran thought-based tech, or the Voryn's plasma cannons that had brought peace. It was something far simpler: a human's ability to see through the noise and get straight to the heart of the problem. For hours, Jay had listened to the diplomats drone on, their speeches filled with technical jargon and political rhetoric that had only exacerbated the deadlock. He hadn't expected much to change by speaking up, but when the moment came, the words had tumbled out and the galaxy shifted. His suggestion wasn't a stroke of genius, it was practical, born from the kind of common sense that had made humanity resilient in the face of extinction. The Xyler Nebula was a finite resource. Fighting over it would drain both sides until neither could stand. Yet, the real shock wasn't the plan itself. It was how the Voryn had responded. Their paranoia had taken root. They feared Earth's unpredictability, a trait they had miscalculated. As Jay mulled over the events, the words he had said earlier echoed in his mind. "You're all posturing for a war you can't win." Standing on the observation deck later, staring out at the distant stars, Jay felt the weight of what had happened. The black hole loomed in the distance, its violent pull constant. But there was a strange calm inside him. The galaxy, teetering on the edge of annihilation, had been spared by sheer will, human will. Jay wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't even a trained negotiator. He was just a guy from Earth, a survivor in a galaxy of warriors and empires. But that human resilience, that innate drive to survive against all odds, had turned the tide of history. Earth folks just don't quit, he muttered under his breath, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. For a fleeting moment, Jay allowed himself to savor the victory. The Alliance had been saved, and though the galaxy's future remained uncertain, humanity's role in it was clearer than ever. No one could outlast them. The summit would end soon, but the story of Earth's chaotic ingenuity would echo throughout the galaxy for cycles to come.